Adams County is getting close to turning 200 years old. Founded back in 1825, the families and individuals of Adams County have seen a lot through the years.
That's right. And WGEM's Joseph Lawler spoke with some of the people who want to highlight the county's history. Joseph, what are some of the events that people should keep their eye out for?
Well, Daniel and Raja, with the community's rich history, the Adams County Bicentennial Commission has been in the process of planning a year full of opportunities for education and celebration.
Our theme has been educate, celebrate, commemorate.
Former Quincy Mayor Chuck Scholes is the chair for the Adams County Bicentennial Commission. Brought together in 2023, the commission aims to create a year full of educational and celebratory events to honor 200 years of Adams County history.
It gives us an opportunity to look back, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned with our own history.
From the Lincoln-Douglas debates to the story of Paul Tibbets to the countless innovators and community members who put the county on the map, Adams County is filled with historical significance.
There's not many towns around here that have been in existence for 200 years, along with Adams County, so it's very important, and we've had a lot of significant events take place. We've influenced events nationally and internationally.
Scholes says a large part of the education angle is supplying programming to the thousands of students within the county. One member of the Executive Commission, Gary Farhaw, says he hopes the stories and events within the coming year will light a spark in the younger generations.
I think this will give people a real shot in the arm and real enthusiasm about going forward.
He says anyone and everyone is welcome to be a part of the process.
We want everybody to be involved, and there will be plenty of things that will interest people.
The celebrations will kick off next January. Most of the money needed will be raised through sponsorships and donors. And the county, Farrell has shared that the county has given the committee $30,000 of ARPA funds to get started. Raja?
Thank you, Joseph. Now, if you're interested in volunteering or donating, you can find those contacts on our website. Commission representatives will also be present at the 2024 WGEM Home and Living Show.